Good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Resources, Transformation, Overview and Scrutiny panel. I am Councillor Alan O'Sullivan, Chairman of the panel. For the benefit of those watching the meeting online, please would members introduce themselves during the meeting, if not already introduced by name. Please note that this meeting is being broadcast live on the Council's website and on YouTube. It will remain available for a minimum of 12 months. Please use the microphone and switch it off when you have finished speaking. Please switch any mobile devices to silent. If the fire alarm rings, please leave the room and use the nearest fire exit. Do not use the lift. Please go to the fire assembly point in the car park. For the benefit of those watching the meeting online, please would members introduce themselves during the meeting, if not already introduced. In fact, we said that before. So, first time's apologies.
No apologies.
Thank you. Item 1 is the minutes of the last meeting. Has everybody agreed with those?
Agreed.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any declarations of interest for this meeting, apart from the obvious?
Yes, I've got one. Member of Hampshire County Council.
Yeah. Did you get Hampshire County Council?
Yeah, we can note that, yeah, thank you, Chair.
Item 3, public participation. There is no public participation today. We're going to change the running order slightly, so we're going to go to item 5 first. So, Ingrid.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm presenting an update this morning on our transformation programme. So busy agenda, I've kept it quite succinct, but I think it will still give a really good flavour of the breadth of work that we are delivering across the whole programme and the progress and pace that we're making. If any members would like more of a deep dive into any areas of the programme or a more in-depth discussion, we're really open to holding one-to-ones or separate briefings, so please just get in touch with myself or Rebecca Drummond and we'd be more than happy to arrange that for you. So I'm going to take you through each of the themes of our transformation strategy and then the projects that sit within those themes and what we've done to date and then what our upcoming milestones look like. So if we start with really the largest programme, which is Customer and Digital, and this is the one that is delivering the most benefits for our customers getting in touch and requiring services from the Council. Our Regulatory Services Technology project, which is a replacement and upgrade of our current system, has gone well. We've done a lessons learned activity to make sure that we're really clear on the stumbling blocks that we saw before when we tried to deliver this upgrade, and that we're clear on how we will go forward. We've managed to secure from our current supplier a commitment that they will continue to support us until we have new technology in place. So it will be kept stable and we will work through the planning that we need to do to make sure this project gets over the line in the right ways. And at the moment we are looking at what technical and specialist resource we might need to support that, making sure that we have the right roles. For our revenues and benefits system, we've agreed on our new supplier. And we've done a series of demos with them to make sure that they're going to meet our needs and that the technology they're offering will integrate with our new customer relationship management system and support what we're trying to seek in terms of citizen access. So moving forward, we will be procuring the new system and extending contract arrangements where appropriate to do so, and entering into a period of detailed planning and alignment with our customer work to make sure that all our deliverables and milestones are both realistic and will work together to build a much better picture for customers in terms of how they interact with our council services. Housing and maintenance repair system, we've identified a supplier and negotiated with them. We have a good quote which has come in from them and is under budget. So we're completing our statement of works, which sets out what we can expect them to provide us and what it will be that we are procuring, and then what that will mean for us in terms of delivery. So we will be awarding that contract and then similarly understanding the detailed planning that we need to do in order to achieve implementation. And then finally, our customer platform. So this one is moving at real pace. We are targeting go lives for this within the coming months. We've awarded the contract to Netcall They're a market leader in this kind of customer technology, and the products and tools that they've offered us are outstanding. So from implementation, we will be offering voice language, so intelligent AI for our customers will be able to tell us on the phone what they're wanting to contact us about, and it will route them automatically. Can route them out of the council if the call is incorrectly sent to us, and it can start building cases automatically and passing those back to the operational areas. So we are building that at the moment. The work to do that started yesterday, and we fully engaged the business as part of those working groups. So this is very much a co-design between our ICT teams, our transformation support staff, and our operational staff who are leading the work and leading the design. Then we come on to people and capabilities. The team have done great work in this area. Just to pick out a couple of the things amongst the huge amount they've delivered over the last couple of months since I last updated this group. We have a new performance and development review process. It's called Growth and Goals. So it speaks much more to that continuous professional development, support for the individual, and positioning our staff skills as we move forward through LGR, but also just to keep people engaged and on the right side of the change that they're all managing at the moment. So that is being rolled out as we speak. Our Embracing Change sessions, which are face-to-face sessions designed to support staff across the whole region who are managing significant amounts of change and uncertainty at the moment, and especially for our line managers who can be in a really difficult position between a rock and a hard place, obviously dealing with change themselves but being sought to support their teams. So they are being heavily promoted by Kate. We're very grateful for that, and we've seen good engagement across those sessions, but they will continue on and maybe roll past December if people still need to use them. And then upcoming, we have a change management toolkit, so really some practical tools and techniques for people who are managing change in their own areas, whether that be data gathering and redesign or supporting their team's well-being. It's just giving them the practical tools and approaches to do that. And then we will be initiating our LGR staff engagement plan, and we have specific people in our OD team who are tasked with just looking at what we need to do for the workforce and really working hard to make sure messages land in the right way and people feel that they have a voice in the changes that are happening. With assets and accommodation, I know you received an update from John Cooper this year around the planning that he'd done in some of the analytical work. So the team have taken that away and done much more of the detailed planning to understand really what is that activity for the next 12 months and who do we need to lead some of that. So again, we're in a process of more detailed planning and some recruitment to make sure that we have the right people to lead it. We're also exploring technology solutions for our corporate assets world and seeing whether or not we can bring them in line with the significant amount of technology we're delivering across other elements of the portfolio. And then finally, moving on to finances and delivery, we presented the refreshed transformation strategy and business case in August, and just want to thank members for their support with that. Our data project, we're working with an external firm, Simpsons, and they're really supporting us to understand where our data gaps are, what data we need to support the new technology, and how that flows between our different systems to create a seamless journey for customers and very efficient casework for staff. So it's a complex piece of work that they're supporting our IT team to do, but working very much alongside us with that. And then finally, we're building a project management office, which is a fancy name really for one place to keep documentation and updates about all the projects we conduct as a council, and to make sure that we have clear sight of the size of our challenge and commitment around those, and the ability to rapidly prioritise as we need to, as we go towards LGR and face any other priorities that the council need to deliver. So thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much for that presentation. The customer call system, which is started, was it yesterday or something, how long before that will be finished and up and running?
So we can get the core elements of that ready and up and running within a couple of months, but what we're considering at the moment are the other service pressures that we have going on. So what we will do is take a weekly confidence rating in terms of the technical build and staff readiness, And then we will also be working with our EMT to make sure that we don't deploy those changes at the same time that we could be facing additional service pressure from waste rollout, organisations for elections, or anything else that is taking away time from the service. We're keen to not overburden people, so there is a little bit of balance to be had in that.
Councillor Wade.
Councillor Alex Wade, Hive Central. With Netcall, firstly, how many other local government organisations similar to us do they work with to understand the market and the customer base that they will be supporting and the residents? And secondly, in their presentation, what will be their approach to testing, particularly bear in mind that we have a mixture of residents, older, younger, hard of hearing, people who might not be using the right turn of phrase that AI will appreciate. We've got a similar thing that we use where I work, and there are still people that come through to the wrong line, and you can't then transfer them through. So what testing will be done using people within NFDC and Netcall working together to sort of cover all bases, so anyone who asks any question on bins or housing or whatever, but in different turns of phrases can pick it up and go to the right place. And also on different types of tech and phones, bear in mind mobile versus handheld device. Thank you.
So if I just take the first question that you asked, I don't know the exact number the Netcall work with, but we've spoken to 12 local councils that use it, and they also integrate into that things like Bartech and other systems we use. So we haven't just looked at that in isolation, we've looked across our system architecture as to what is realistic to link into Netcall to make sure it's the right thing for us. The customer testing is being led by Ryan Stevens, so as part of our plan we have a clear stream of work which is all around customer consultation. We're currently targeting different queues, as we call them, so vulnerable customers, the right demographics to really look at that testing, and that will happen alongside the staff testing as well, so I can bring back more information around that. When it comes to the language model, I understand the point that you're making. So we're training that at the moment. And as an example, we can't always be certain. There will be some misdirection within the IVR, which is the telephone system, at points, I'm sure. But at the moment, we're trying to teach it different words for waste, and we're getting close to 30. So training the language model certainly has been a piece of work that we've taken very seriously and really taken our time to make sure that it does understand that kind of natural language that different people will use. However, there may still be gaps.
And also, it's a minority, but obviously there are people who use hard of hearing systems to come in, sort of recorded systems as well. And obviously that's something that we're trying to feed in. I appreciate it'll be a small amount, but it will still be part of the demographic.
Yeah, accessibility is absolutely a core part of the system functionality, so there should be no challenges around that.
Councillor Wood.
Councillor Phil Woods, Fordingbridge. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Programme Management Office, what it's designed to achieve, and if you've got any milestones attached to those achievements going forward?
No, I'm happy to come in there. So what we're intending with the Programme Management Office is that overall visibility and assurance framework for all our projects. So it's what, as Ingrid's mentioned, it's one place to capture every project that's going on across the whole organisation, the financial resources, the people resources needed to deliver that project, and how that project aligns with our strategic objectives. So it's that one repository for all projects, but also then gives us the ability to have the visibility to challenge some of those projects, make sure that projects are only started that do achieve our strategic objectives, but also that they're delivering, they're being monitored and they're delivering on those objectives. So it brings it together. In terms of milestones, this is sort of early stages in the development of that Programme Management Office. And one of the reasons that we're doing it is that we absolutely acknowledge the pressure that LGR will put on the organisation and the organisation's resources. So we're just at the outset of starting to stand that up, but we can absolutely bring an update back to this panel.
So how will you measure its progress? Will there be KPIs attached to it, or? We
can certainly look at KPIs. Part of the the building of it will be around what does that governance framework look like, and how does the Programme Management Office fit in with our existing governance. So we've got lots of boards and panel meetings at the moment that consider different types of projects. So that will be part of the how does it interlink with existing governance, and then how do we monitor its effectiveness?
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? No? Thank you very much for that presentation. I know it's difficult with all the LGR and the transformation going at the same time. It's a lot of work, and with other things coming up as well. Thank you. We're going to move back to item 4, which is the local government reorganisation, which I believe our Chief Executive and Matt will be presenting.
Thank you. Okay, so you've got some quite a significant reports in front of you with your papers today, and this is the start of the more formal consideration by this council of our response to the government invitation/instruction to come up with a proposal for local government reorganisation for the whole of Hampshire and Southampton, Portsmouth and the Isle of Wight. So that's what we are now considering in this panel and going forwards at full council next week to then inform a cabinet decision on Friday. So this is a really good opportunity. There will be informal member briefing as well with the slides set so that all members can have a chance to sort of hear the background and have a chance to ask questions even if they're not part of this panel. So this slide demonstrates what the look and feel is of the case that we've been working on across 12 councils in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. I think we started off working with all 15. It's fair to say that there have been some difference of views, and we are still working through that process of which of the 15 councils is going to support which option, and I can come on to that a little bit as we talk through the proposals. We wanted to, I won't dwell on this slide, but it is really important given the significance and seriousness of the change ahead that members can see the work that has been undertaken over the last 6 months or 7 months in order to get to the point where we are today and in preparation for our deadline on the 26th of September. So as you can see here, it started with all 15 councils working together, and you will recall that we worked together all the way through to an interim submission, which really established principles about how we wanted to work together and started to explore all of the different geographies and options that there are in an area as complicated as Hampshire and the Solent. I think it's fair to say that it is one of the most complex, along with places like Kent, definitely one of the largest populations, and with significant cities as well. It's a different dynamic to potentially where you've had, for example, Wiltshire, which was a more simple geography and a clearer outcome that you were working towards from the start. So we then had our response from government, which to our interim proposal. It didn't steer to any geographies, and it didn't give a view around boundary changes, which was obviously one of our main concerns. But it did give us more guidance about what they were looking for in the full response. It made it very clear certain areas they wanted to be explored, and also the level of community engagement that the government was expecting we would be doing with our residents and our businesses. Working collectively, we've moved through an appraisal assessment. At that point, after that point, the County Council in East Hampshire decided to move and work on their options separately, although we have been sharing the same data at the very base level. There's a data repository, and that was something that government were really clear that we needed to do, so that ultimately the government who are deciding on these options can have some confidence that the same data has been used, even if the assumptions and the outcomes are different. So we've moved through to final proposal development, which is what you now have before you today. From the work of the 12 councils, 3 options were narrowed down. You can imagine with so many different leaders, councils, political persuasions, and absolutely passionate views about geography. There were a range of different options, so I think to get it down to this was seen as a good step forwards. Our option that we've supported, and I'll come on to talk about why, was option 1, which is the new council structure. So there'd be 4 councils on the mainland and the Isle of Wight, and our new council for the New Forest would be across the geography of New Forest, Test Valley, Winchester, and East Hampshire. At the moment, supporting this option, although it's all subject to council consideration through this month, there is ourselves, Test Valley and Basingstoke that we understand may go through to support this, but it's all subject to their council decision making, as is ours. The second option, which sees the whole of the New Forest with Southampton and Eastleigh, and then the other councils still creating the kind of 4 on the mainland and the Isle of Wight. That is only, as far as we understand, supported at the moment by Winchester. And then the third option, which was a totally separate option supported by primarily the cities, but some other councils, has been around a boundary change option, which sees quite significant areas from the Mid Hampshire and New Forest councils adding to the potentially new Southampton-based council and a potential Portsmouth council. What has come out very recently from MHCLG and legal advice is that the current legislation does not allow for a third option to be considered as a standalone, because the legislation requires this to build on districts as a whole. And then you have to ask the Secretary of State to modify that proposal with boundary changes. So what has happened over the last couple of weeks, and the case before you doesn't always reflect that in every page, is that now the third option is kind of having to be referred to as 1A. So those councils that support getting to that final outcome, they have to say they support option 1 and then ask the Secretary of State to make boundary changes. So their support for option 1 would be conditional on boundary changes happening. Clearly, that's not an option that we support, and I think the thing that's been really different for us compared to every other council through this period of time has been the effort we have had to also put into, in effect, challenging what we do not see as justified or necessary, which is that additional kind of proposal for a boundary change option. So I'm going to hand over to Alan now to just run through some slides on the financial case.
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, just a few fundamentals really in terms of how the financial case has been built through KPMG and work involving obviously the Section 151 group. So there are 3 kind of fundamentals to it really. There's the estimation, if you like, of the recurring savings that we think is going to be achieved ultimately from going from 14 authorities to 4. So, recognising that there are, duplicated costs and accommodations and those sorts of things, lots of back office functions. So, lots of work to do in terms of contract consolidation, fleet consolidation, reduction in councillor numbers, all that sort of thing. So that's basically all worked through the KPMG modelling to arrive at an overall recurring saving number. So in terms of the option 1 and 2, the estimate there is just short of 82 million. We then have, again, an estimation of recurring disaggregation costs. So this time round, recognising that there are economies of scale through the single large county model, that by the time you introduce, say, a fourth new unitary authority, there are going to be some additional costs incurred in setting that up. So again, there's an estimation then run through the KPMG model. Again, this is all predicated on their previous experience and expertise in terms of supporting local authorities through LGR bids, both in the past and obviously across the country at the moment. The third figure then really is the one-off implementation cost. So again, there's an estimate here of 128 million in order to achieve the establishment of the 4 new authorities. So that's the same figure for both options 1 and 2, based on using the district boundary blocks. I'll cover a little bit more detail on the next slide in terms of things that are included there. And then in terms of the option 3, or the boundary change option, now likely referred to as 1A, there's I suppose a boundary change premium applied. So this is the reason why the implementation costs then rise to 133 million as the estimate under that option. And again, I'm sure you can appreciate that it's not been done before in terms of disaggregating a district council. So that ultimately is going to be more complex and ergo cost more money to achieve. Ultimately, annual recurring benefit for both options is the same number, so 63.9 million, with a payback of 3 years, or just over 3 years for the boundary change option. So just over the next slide, just a little bit more detail just in terms of implementation costs. Obviously, it is a big number. Again, I think we'll hear in more detail as we go through the process just how complex this is. Kate's already touched on the fact that this is arguably the most complex in the country, just because of the size and scale of Hampshire and the number of authorities that we're working with. So, things covered in implementation costs are things like, workforce exit costs, development costs. There's significant transition to the new authorities, so, there'll be significant investment in transformation, the consolidation of 4 sets of accounts and 4 systems and planning softwares and revs and bend systems all into one new combined system. These things take a long time to achieve and ultimately cost a lot of money to get there. And we have touched on the boundary change premium under that option, and then obviously there's a degree of contingency built in as well to that implementation cost. And then finally, just in terms of the last slide, as I say, just in terms of how the process is run, as I say, it's very much been led by KPMG as the commission consultants on behalf of the 12 authorities. It's not their first time doing this, so they've got a good history and record of supporting authorities through LGR. And ultimately what we have had is a real good collective oversight through the Section 151 officer group. So I said we've had I'd say a good degree of challenge, if you like, to some of the assumptions in certain areas. We've had a really good opportunity to feed in and as I say, give some challenge and oversight to their estimates. And essentially, one of the main roles for us, by that first bullet point there under that second heading, is just the consistent basis of financial information. So again, we all fed in to a similar template, working on the same methodology. Again, it took quite a few iterations to get there, because I'm sure you can imagine we all do things slightly differently across 14 authorities. By the time, obviously, you've got the county featuring as well, again, they set themselves up slightly differently again. So, yeah, a lot of kind of consolidation work gone into that to make sure that we're all kind of happy and on a consistent basis. That was all I was going to offer, so I'll pass back over.
Thanks, Alan. So a little bit more about why option 1, and in your overall case for change, what the model was for how we worked together, given that there were different views, was to agree a collective text, which is the case that supports smaller authorities on the mainland. So to have 4 authorities on the mainland was the common theme that we were working to, rather than 3, which is the County Council's proposal. So there was a lot that we had in common that is in the main case, and then the appendices in effect start making the case for option 1, option 2 or option 3, or the boundary change modifications. So we feel we've got a really strong case. We worked with Tess Valley on this, and you know, it's great that Basingstoke now also support us on this option. It's subject to council. The reasons up there you can see, I think a lot of the local reasons you'll be really familiar with in terms of the views of our residents and businesses, and why that geography, although absolutely a change for us because we'll still be delivering services in a much larger council, the service model can be much more responsive to our communities because we share so many similarities in terms of commitment to local democracy, our strong towns and parishes. We've got the 2 national parks across that area in the 4 councils. So a lot in common, but also it supports the bigger agenda of the mayoral authority, because what we believe is that having the new mayor, who will then run the mayoral authority with the new bigger unitary councils and the leaders of those 4 councils on the mainland, is that actually it's really important that one of those council leaders represents the kind of rural Mid-Hampshire, New Forest, National Park kind of agenda, because otherwise if you just have 3 councils based around the big cities and leaders of city-based, you know, councils, that's what the mayoral authority will be like, and there won't necessarily be a voice for the sorts of issues that we know our council area in option 1 would be concerned about. So absolutely still supporting growth. We don't believe that you need to take areas from the New Forest to Southampton to deliver, you know, the Solent Freeport, for example, which we're going to come on to talk about today. So absolutely still supporting growth, but doing it in a way that's right for this community. And just a few more points. So I've talked about some of those points about services designed to meet the needs of our communities. You know, not having, one of the other issues is if you've got a big city and then you've got a rural area, actually how do you design environmental health services for those 2 very different areas, or what's your model going to be for customer services and information centres when you've got a city area and a rural area? We also believe that it's, and the National Park have done an assessment of the options against their principles, and they have came out recognising for the New Forest National Park that option 1 they felt best furthered the purpose that we all have to support the National Park's objectives. And again, I've mentioned the community identity point, and our option keeps the whole of the forest together. I'm now going to hand over to Matt, who with his team has been doing a fantastic job of engaging our communities in this whole quite bureaucratic concept. So yeah, I'm really pleased with what we've done. But over to Matt.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, as has been mentioned, one of the government criteria for local government reorganisation is that the views of local people shape those proposals that go into government. And given that, again, as has been said, the New Forest is essentially one of the main areas of disagreement between the different options. It's absolutely vital that we took the time to engage with our communities to ensure that those views were carried forward and represented. So we worked together with the 11 other councils, reference working with KPMG, broadly around those 3 options that you've already seen. In terms of the summary of how we went about doing it, so you would have been aware of the county-wide survey, to which there were over 3,000 responses from New Forest District residents, which was the highest across Hampshire and the Solent as a single area for responding, and actually still as a percentage of our population well above the recognised benchmarks for reliable engagement outcomes, so a good piece of work there. We ran a series of deliberative workshops with residents, in person and online, to understand their hopes, fears and aspirations for local government reorganisation, but also to talk about those specific 3 options you're aware of. Given the boundary change option being pursued, we did some specific waterside engagement work, and a really rich report was produced from that. And we also had input through surveys and through events from our town and parish councils and our businesses. On top of that, regular stakeholder emails were sent by the leader of the council to local stakeholders, updating at all stages of the process and making sure that the message around having your say was really out there and present. So what we've done is summarise what all of that engagement aggregated is telling us, and we feel that that is generally can be summarised across 5 themes. So a special identity, we know that we often refer to the unique challenges in the New Forest and how we tackle those as a district council, but actually that's what our residents, communities, businesses are telling us as well, that there is that intrinsic link between the New Forest and the identity of communities. And then moving on to 2, well then how you design and deliver services, that's really critical that those authorities that are doing that really understand the local needs. One of the key things that came out, really recognising, I think, our protected landscapes was the concern around overdevelopment and how you manage the environmentally sensitive areas in the district amongst that overall growth objective as well, and being able to bring those forward together. And then really 4 and 5 speak in different angles really, a clear message that the district feels rurally aligned and a clear message that it doesn't feel aligned to the urban, and lack of commonality around that urban model that we know is also in the proposals. Specifically on the county-wide survey, so in terms of the options 1, 2 and 3 that were presented, mixed views across the areas for option 1, but it did receive net overall support across the whole of Hampshire and the Solent, but really overwhelming support from New Forest and Test Valley. Of those councils that were more in opposition, that was East Hants and Winchester, although noting that as East Hants didn't take part in the collective work with the 12, very low response rates in East Hampshire, just to mention that. Option 2 had higher opposition overall across the region, but particularly high opposition in New Forest and Test Valley. And then boundary change was universally disliked in terms of the overall picture, but very high levels of opposition in New Forest and Test Valley. I mentioned the workshops, the deliberative engagement that was undertaken, so 4 sessions in person and online, and a representative recruitment piece to make sure that we would reach all sorts of people from across the district, including those harder to reach. There was commoner representation, those that are identified as financially vulnerable, age, all demographics taken into account. So a really sort of rich evidence base really to come forward from our communities. I mentioned it wasn't all about those LGR options, it was about what good looks like for local government and how those residents can develop a set of guiding principles to move forward with whatever the outcome is. So as with a number of these pieces of work, whatever the LGR outcome, a new council is going to have some really helpful reports to pick up and understand what our residents are telling us. But yes, a clear preference for option 1 as part of that specific question around the geography. And then just a little bit more there around some of the other things that came out of those workshops. So the environmental aspect coming forward quite strongly, and the county-wide survey, it was 65% of respondents across the whole area in opposition to that option 3. Just picking up on our town and parish councils, we engaged with them regularly online, but also ran the event back at the end of April with Norfolk town and parish councils, and the general themes there were the strong opposition to splitting the district, again telling us around that rural alignment. Is accepted actually just local reorganisation generally. There are risks as we move forward on how those town and parish councils will engage with their new principal councils, but also what's the perspective for them in having potentially to take on slightly different roles in the future, and then being seen as a really clear and important community voice in those models moving forward. And then, yes, as well on training, communication, how can those town and parish councils continue to step up in an entirely new governance arrangement above them. The business survey we ran, so 51 survey responses from our businesses through the business newsletter, and very compelling outcomes from that actually. So 98% support for option 1, 100% support for supporting the needs of rural businesses. And then finally, that point around 96.1% awareness of LGR. So our businesses are telling us they do understand what's going on, and here are our views. Kate, did you want to say a few words about this one first, generally as a piece of work, or shall I?
No, you can.
Yeah. So one of the other pieces of work that forms part of the paperwork that will go through to Cabinet and Council, so we've got the engagement summary, is also the work around boundary changes and why this council feels that to protect the integrity of the New Forest, you need to maintain those district building blocks. So a reminder of what that looks like in terms of option 3, or 1A as it will be called. It will incorporate the 4 parishes along the waterside, so Tottenham and Ealing, Marchwood, Hythe and Dibden and Fawley, and they would join the Southampton and Eastleigh unitary, with the remaining area of the New Forest aligning with Test Valley, Winchester and East Hampshire. So that's just a sort of visual representation for you. So what that report does essentially is presents all the risks of that happening. So there's all sorts of information in there and a number of supporting background documents in there, collaboration across the council to bring it together, all our technical experts across varying service areas. But in summary, there are concerns that it would disrupt governance and service delivery when you're taking an area of a district away, you're taking a proportion of the HRA, you're taking a proportion of how we deliver our operational services, you're taking a proportion of the way we deliver elections, so lots of information in there for you to have a look at in terms of the risks for service delivery. Also, Kate's mentioned the National Park Authority and through that Mid-Hampshire option, those protected landscapes being represented. The New Forest National Park Authority boundaries are split by the boundary change proposal, so lots of information in there around our statutory environmental duties. And then turning back to the kind of community angle, all our engagement is telling us that this isn't an option that is supported by our communities. So there's information in this document that also brings together some of that community input too. So I've mentioned some of the service delivery risks, so you can take these slides away and have a read of those in more detail. But moving back to that community engagement piece, just wanted to pick up on a specific piece of work that was undertaken. It was the waterside engagement report that you will all be familiar, hopefully, with now, working with Ferrier Urbanism. So a not very traditional local government report, but one that was designed to try and capture in a more compelling and emotive way what the identity and character of the waterside communities are. So you'll have seen from that photography, mapping, observations, conversations, and a video accompanying that as well now on the council's website. And the key findings from that: a strong place attachment, that environmental identity we've talked about. Linked to those service challenges were some of the infrastructure challenges for those communities along the waterside. So that's what they're telling us as communities, but also that links into how do you deliver services in the context of those infrastructure challenges, and also those housing pressures as well, if you're taking part of the district away, and then some other social and economic concerns that came forward. So finally, as I said on the previous pieces of engagement, this is a really useful piece of work, really powerful evidence base that whatever the outcome through local government reorganisation, our new decision makers for the area serving the waterside have that rich bank of community views that they need to be looking at and taking into account. So hopefully a well-received piece of work. So just handing back to Kate for next steps, I think.
Thank you. And hopefully also helpful, we have had significant interest in, for example, neighbourhood plans, the sort of work and engagement that we've done through the focus groups, but also some of that, the waterside work, is really rich, and I'd encourage towns and parishes as well. We can share that. A lot of it's online already. So in terms of next steps, I've covered the 26th of September deadline. We are then anticipating the government has to review the proposals, and then they decide which they are going to consult with the public in Hampshire and the Solent on. So it's likely that they would consult on all of them unless they feel that there's a problem with them, or if they feel that perhaps a council might have put in a quite random one. So it gives them the ability to sift, but our expectation is that there'll be a consultation which will include our preferred option. We've got a timeline next, haven't we? I'll just talk about the timeline in a bit more detail. So I talked with group leaders about this timeline earlier, and you start seeing the scale of the work over the next 3 years, and that's part of the reason for the project management office we were talking about earlier, is because we now have such fixed deadlines, both for LGR but also for the things that this council absolutely wants to deliver before it vests into the new council in April 2028. And we only have a certain amount of budget, and we only have a certain amount of staff. So we've got an opportunity now to get that clarity about what are we delivering between now and April 2028. And that's where the council-wide PMO will really come in. So going back to this, you can see between the submission of proposals, the green phase, to a decision, because we are currently a devolution priority programme, the government have told us they would try and give us a decision on LGR by spring. That's what they've said. I think they've then realised that there are elections for a mayor potentially, which would run from mid-March to May. So we are either going to get a decision before that starts or after, because it will be in the kind of sensitive period otherwise. So there's a certain amount of preparedness that we're doing, and the report explains that in terms of, we're really gearing up now to think about our data, our capacity, how we're going to manage this programme as a council. But what will happen after the decision is that then there will be the setting up of a programme which will have to work across all of the councils, especially across Hampshire, because Hampshire will be, in all of the options, Hampshire County is disaggregated. So there'll be a top-level programme, and then there'll be work in the clusters of councils that will be creating the new councils. And while that purple preparation happens, you can see at the bottom there's some legislation that the government have to put in place. A key terminology will be the structural changes order, which you will hear more about going forwards, but that really starts to, it gives, it's basically the mandate. So if you're a council that's refusing to participate in local government reorganisation, the structural changes order will instruct you to now cooperate. It will also set financial context to make sure that the shadow authority, which comes in the orange phase, starts having the oversight of any significant decisions around commitments, particularly financial commitments, that any of the sovereign councils might make. You then move into preparing for shadow council elections, and the full report does have a section. Our case for change talks about the number of members going forwards, but it would be for the shadow council to actually set that up for us to set that up in advance and then to elect to those new wards in May 2027. And then the shadow authority is the authority that can then start taking decisions on recruiting its statutory officers, it's setting up the constitution, it sets up the budget, all in preparation for the start of the next year in April 2028. So hopefully that's given you a bit of a sense of, I know we're at the very beginning of this, but you can see that it's a long journey, and then after go live, you then have a few years of resolving everything / transformation to deliver all your savings. But yeah, hopefully that's been helpful. I think that's the end of our slides, and between us we're happy to answer any questions or help your debate.
Thank you very much for that presentation, which gives a good overview of how it's been and how it's going to go forward. I was looking at some of the data, for instance, in the New Forest, the density of population of housing is like 256 per kilometre, whereas Southampton is about 14 or 1500. So a completely different mindset to how the council will be thinking. And I think we also had the strongest response to the consultation, or nearly the strongest consult, which shows the strong feeling of the local population in New Forest. Councillor Davis?
I once likened it to being hanged, shot or blown up with a bazooka, and my opinion hasn't changed on that one, I'm afraid. My question is more around democracy angle, both on town and parish council roles in this new setup, because obviously if you're having a much larger council, this is now our proposal, the New Forest District Council proposal, proposes a council that will stretch from New Milton to Petersfield. We need strong governance behind that in order to make sure that our residents aren't being left behind by a very out-of-touch, distant council. So town and parish council governance is important, but also warding arrangements and councillor numbers. There was a little bit on councillor numbers, but it was very, very top level, wasn't much with regards to warding arrangements. Obviously, for councillors, it's helpful to know what the actual setup's going to be, but also for residents, it's helpful to know whether you're going to have a local councillor or you're going to have someone that's going to be covering miles upon miles of the forest. So what's the situation there? I assume Matt's going to be the one to answer that.
If I just pick up on the warding, it was very high level information that went into the case for change around the electorate ratios for a new council. So essentially, how many councillors is the overall council going to have, and then what does that look like in terms of, well, if I'm a resident, what number of residents alongside me are served by a single councillor? But what we put in the option 1 appendix, because it did fit well for delivering this process, was using the county divisions, the current county divisions. It's recognised within the time frame that we've got to deliver LGR that some form of existing governance is likely to be needed to make this happen, and then the Boundary Commission would undertake a review in probably the first term of office of these new councils to do that more comprehensive review. But yeah, just for clarity, the option 1 was around a 93 council size based on the existing county divisions.
And on town and parish councils, because that was not mentioned much in there.
Hi. I think definitely from our conversations with town and parishes, and I think I can say it's shared by Tess Valley and Winchester. We're not in such regular conversation with East Hampshire, but there is a real deep understanding of the role that towns and parishes play and the way that we've all worked together across our different areas to really deliver for our communities by having good working relationships. And recognising the role of towns and parishes. So I think The government themselves have said there is more that we should expect them to be producing around that very local or neighbourhood level. I think we are a little bit wary that sometimes that can, from this government, be quite urban focused, so it can often talk about neighbourhoods, and it did feel like the devolution white paper and bill, you know, that local level and role for towns and parishes was a bit absent. You know, I know that the councils that would be working together on option 1 absolutely recognise and understand that and would want to build really great, effective, very local relationships and working governance. I'm a bit, you know, that's where it gets harder with some of the models that put us together with the city. Not as a criticism of a city, but you've then got to think about, well, what's the model that's going to work, say, for Southampton, Eastleigh and New Forest? Well, Eastleigh's got a few towns and parishes, Southampton doesn't have any. So what's going to be that model, or the county's option, which puts us with Tess Valley and New Forest and Southampton and Eastleigh? So I think that's potentially a risk for town and parish councils.
Thank you. Councillor Woods.
Phil Woods, Fordingbridge. I've got 2 questions. Firstly, I think Matt should be congratulated for the work he's done on the PR and information activity on LGR. However, knocking on the doors when I speak to a resident and I mention LGR or local government reorganisation, I get a blank face. And I'm wondering what more we are going to do to get the message across.
Yeah, I think it's recognised that despite, you know, the impressions we're getting, and a lot of that might be digital content, not everybody is digitally enabled. This is a marathon, not a sprint, I would say, and you know, moving through to 2028 and a government consultation as well to come in the autumn, winter time. So very much our approach has been, when there is something for our residents to do, let's work really hard to communicate so that they can take that information and do something with it, so that they can have their say, essentially. So we'll be looking to step that up again around about the time the government consult. But conscious as well, there's that weariness and fatigue if you're continually bombarding. So a balance between, you can never say it enough times to get the message out there and making sure it's timely.
Okay. Thanks for that. My second question is to Alan about the... I get asked about frontline services when I knock on doors. Are there any models that have been made that things will improve after LGR? Will we have a bigger spend on frontline services, or hasn't that been looked at?
I'd say we're not quite there yet, because obviously there's a really complex disaggregation of the county services. There's the combining of, you know, a number of district borough services and a lot of decisions that will be taken by the new shadow authority in terms of delivery models and methodologies, etc. So at this point in the process, we're not quite there, but obviously it's very much in our interest that we don't want to see any reduction in services. We don't want to see any cuts in services. But it's going to be a whole new world for a new authority to work within, so we can't guarantee that those things won't happen.
As an expert, what's your personal view? Will things get better, you think?
It's a tricky one. I mean, from the research I've done and from the, you know, the several case studies going back, you know, there are clear advantages to working at, you know, the single unitary layer. I think there are obviously clear disadvantages in terms of being a further step removed from your local community at the same time. So, yes, I think genuinely there are advantages and disadvantages to the model going forward.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Councillor Wade.
Yeah, thank you very much for the report. Very detailed, very information there. It's very, very clear how much effort has gone in to focus on the council's effort towards option 1, which I do think will be the majority of our community's preference. I would have liked, as this is a scrutiny panel, a little bit more on the good and the bad side of options 2 and option 3, because really we should compare and contrast. It was very heavily led towards option 1. We're here to sort of scrutinise and not be argued pours towards an answer. It will likely be the preference, particularly my community. I haven't met anyone who wants option 3 and the waterside split. I know I scrutinise and I criticise, but really I'd rather be a critical friend than a stranger, and I do not want the forest split. My concern is because the decision is being made elsewhere by government, and that will be new government ministers because of change of the responsible officers now, with Jing McMahon moving on, is that we have to anticipate that obviously there could be another option. We could end up in option 2, and that we have to be realistic when we engage with our residents, that we can go to bat for this preferred option, but obviously the decision may well be out of our hands. And I personally would have been more comfortable with the free unitary authority of Tiflo. I just feel East Hants might be a step too far, might be too big an authority. We've proposed 93 councillors over a wide rural area. You know, we've got one county council who covers Lyndhurst and Fordingbridge, and that's not about people, that's about a huge area to cover now. And I do have concerns about local representation moving forward, because what's that, 23.4 over 10 county authorities, I make it, and that's a lot to be asked of councillors. It is going to happen, but I have concerns that who represents us will obviously, it will be more challenging for whoever these future councillors are, because they'll have more to do. I don't think who will be a county councillor will be as representative as they are now, because you won't have anyone. If you want people like me and Jack and others who work full time, then you know there's no information here that say that I could do that. Is it just going to be a retired or people who you know, financially well off to be councillors? So I have concerns about that. The neighbourhood committee in local areas, it's really quite fudgy, and that there isn't really a lot of detail about how that would work with town and parish councils. It says democratically elected, but how with them? There isn't, and you're absolutely right there. There's no detail about whether they overlap, they work, they represent, and there's deep concerns there as well. And on the finances, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but a 63.9 million saving annually over the whole area. That's the whole of Hampshire, isn't it? So if you split that by district, that's 4.5 million per district, and the county council's budget gap is 100 million or so. So to answer your question, I don't think it'll improve services, and with the 128.2 million or 155, there will be a short-term real impact on our existing residents. So my deep concern is, even though it's going to happen, is that existing services that we have now are going to be impacting the transition. What cuts and savings are going to have to be made? And that's before we lose all the skilled officers and talent. So we are between a rock and a hard place. And I'm deeply concerned that in all our arguments, we're going to get... I think we're nearing towards being a team on this collectively, and we look forward to the meeting. But this isn't going to be a future improvement. I have deep, deep concerns about going to bat for the argument that it's going to improve services and it's better financially. Because now you've shown me those numbers, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously Alan knows the figures better than I. In my head, that doesn't improve the existing situations we know over the county and districts. And obviously, we then take on the additional problems of other authorities. I would like one final point. I've never seen so many pictures of Hive in a presentation. So as you love Hive so much, I will be absolutely batting and hoping you show that in other ways moving forward until 2027. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Alvin?
Yeah, thank you. I just would like to make one small point. I think it's a very good presentation. I'm very happy to support the option 1 and the rest of it. But I would, despite what the chairman said, I would follow up on Councillor Wood's point that really the response to the consultation was so meagre that I wonder how much reliance we can really put on it. My figure here is 51 businesses apparently responded, out of how many? And 9,800 residents out of over 2 million. You know, this is nothing. And to say that we have, great public support for option 1 or whatever, I think we are, I hope we're right, but I'm not sure about it. Thank you.
Councillor Davis, do you want to...
Yeah, just quickly. I think sometimes the percentages that you see of 1 and 1.7% of respondents, particularly taking our county-wide survey into account, it's hard sometimes to think that might be representative, but the 1.7% from our area and district is well above the recognised benchmark for a representative, evidence-based sample. So once you do, get out to that number of people, you're getting a reliable view back. I think it's been a challenge, and I think Councillor Woods has mentioned about, it's not on every resident's agenda to engage in the concept of local government reorganisation. But as a district, in the county-wide survey, we attracted very, very nearly as many responses as the entire Hampshire County Council engagement. So we feel that in the context of the subject, we did get a good outcome.
Okay, Councillor Davis.
Yes, sorry, there's a couple of points that kind of came up through the debate. The first one is on local services, which I think Councillor Woods raised. Obviously, we're struggling, well, the council's struggling at the moment with the bin rollout. Obviously, that's on a smaller area, pilot area of New Milton, Lymington, that area. How the hell are the council going to manage when it's like East Hampshire, Winchester, like Test Valley? I worry about the future of services for local people. My second point is about finance. Councillor Wade raised there about the financials that were put up on the screen. Hampshire County Council say theirs will save a load of money. We say ours will save a load. Everyone appears to have found that consultants have said every single proposal they've made are going to save millions upon millions of pounds. Who do our residents believe? It's a real, because bear in mind, this is going to go up to a minister in government. How does the minister know which set of proposals are financially sensible or not? So, I mean, do you know how we're going to make that case?
Yeah, if I just a couple of comments, I think, specifically on the finances. I think, again, context is really important here. So I think the combined spend across the county, across the Hampshire area, on an annual basis is just short of £3.5 billion. So when you take a £64 million estimated saving annually from reorganisation, you know, taking 14 authorities to 4, actually contextually it's about less than 2% of the overall annual spend. So yeah, it sounds a big number in isolation, but in context of what we spend collectively, it's actually a fairly reasonable sum. And yes, there are clear differences in the estimations between, you know, the county case and our case. I think the concentration for us at this point is that this is our joint case that we've been working on, and so all I can do is sit here and say that we've had, you know, good oversight, we've had good engagement in the process. And there's a degree of having to be reliant on KPMG as the experts, knowing what they're doing in terms of churning out the ultimate number. And that's the case that we are signing up to, and that's the case that is going forward to the government. I think Kate would like to comment.
Yeah, thank you. And I think just to add to that, MHCLG have made it clear that they will be interrogating those separate kind of assumptions that have been made on the same base data to come to different outcomes, and we've got our own view about you know, the strength of our assumptions versus other assumptions, and perhaps can come on to those at another time. But I think the other thing that really struck me with this is just to remember that this is only a business case about LGR. It's not building the budgets for the new councils. And I think all of the leaders, I'm looking at our leader, but all of our leaders have been very mindful that this does not solve the problem of local government finance. And so I think they share the concern that when you're disaggregating a county council that has a significant ongoing revenue budget deficit, that potentially, you know, doesn't get solved just by local government reorganisation. So we're looking at a business case for reorganising councils. We're not looking yet, it will be for the shadow councils to then build the budgets for the new councils.
Thank you. Councillor England.
Thank you very much, Councillor England for Lymington. I appreciate all the work that the officers have done, and this is not something that any of us really wanted. But my worry is I really wish that we get what we're advocating for, but my concern is if we get the short, sharp shrift and we don't get what we want, it's almost like then it will go into what I consider crisis management for our local people, and the fact that the forest is so unique. In speaking to anyone at a higher level than in government, do you have a great liaison going there, or are you just given a limited dictatorial section that you're told what's happening and you either tick one of 3 of the boxes, etc., etc.? Is there any room for manoeuvre? That's what I'm asking.
I'm not sure that there's we're not necessarily looking at room for manoeuvre now between the options. I think we're kind of getting to a stage where everybody's supporting one option or another. I do think the complexity of boundary changes kind of adds to what we've been saying all along, which is that these are not small boundary changes. They're not tweaking a few parishes in terms of what people in Whitehall might think that's small little villages. It's actually 40% of our population. So I think that message is getting across. We've got MPs working to support our case. We've already had, for example, when Baroness Taylor came to visit, we've got MHCLG, lead LGR people coming to visit soon. So we will be showing them around the forest and have that opportunity to talk to civil servants as well about some of the reasons why we don't feel that we want to be positive about the option that we do want to support, whilst also making it very clear why we don't think it's justified to sort of split up the district.
Another question. Thank you for that. As you're having more, should I say, consultations coming down from the higher government, shall we put it like that, is there any way that us as a council coming up to their visit can do anything to also galvanise our constituents, to make them more aware and to make this sort of the latter push before a decision is really made? Is there any way forward that we could do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's linked a bit to what Matt was saying about the next phase of which we've got sort of draft plans for, of what we do to encourage our residents to engage with that more formal consultation from government, because that is their consultation to enable them to make a decision. And absolutely, all of our communities, residents, towns and parishes and statutory organisations need to respond to that with their views. So we'll be also thinking about what's our role in supporting that.
Councillor Woods.
Sorry, I just wanted to concur with what Matt said about the statistical validity of the group of people he's got. I was reading an article in the Sunday Times last week, and it's actually said that you don't need a massive group to get the right message, to receive the right message from your constituents. So.
Councillor Wade.
Just very quick points. Firstly, I think it's very important for us to remember that what's been proposed here will have a significant impact on our staff, on all councils, including here, and it's very clear that obviously one of the supposed highlights on efficiencies is that it's going to impact a lot of skilled, highly valued staff here who are going to look at this and think this, where am I going to go moving forward? We're obviously already 13% not filling staff vacancies. First time in a high turnover of staff is that they're talking about the future where they could not have a role and those skills are gone, and that local government organisation means there's a lot of talent and skills that we value in this authority. And if we can't even claim that there's going to be the financial benefit and efficiencies it's very hard for the government to use that as an argument, and I think that point should be passed back. There is no evidence that this is going to resolve the financial issues that impacts all levels of local authority. I would also like it to be fed back, if you can, Jill, and others, to the leader of the Southampton City Council, that we are not an extension of Southampton in my ward of Hive Central. And from a pragmatic sense, I would rather this council went to bat for keeping the district together as opposed to solely just for option one. Because if I'm honest with you, I genuinely don't see option one being chosen. I just have concerns about it being chosen by the government and with East Hance's views. So my priority is keeping the district together. So I want you to go to bat and tell Southampton that the Waterside is not an extension of your district. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I will take great pleasure in doing that, believe me.
Councillor Kate, Councillor Matt, thank you very much for that comprehensive presentation, and we look forward to see what the result might be. It's like getting a wishing.
It's like visiting the dentist.
Yeah. Thank you. Right, let's move on to item 6, which is the Corporate Peer Challenge, and that's over to you, Becky.
Thank you, Chairman. So just a brief introduction to the report that presents an update on the 2024 Peer Challenge recommendations. So members will recall the positive feedback from the Corporate Peer Challenge peer team that came in December last year. They acknowledged a clear vision, strong leadership, dedicated staff, and highlighted the Council's positive culture and commitment to its residents. The peer team made 10 recommendations along with some observations where improvements could be made, and these are set out within the report. Part of the peer challenge process is for the peer team to undertake a progress visit within 12 months of the original visit. This has been scheduled for the 6th of November, so the peer team will come back, a smaller team this time, will come back for a one-day visit. And we're currently scheduling meetings in for focus groups with staff, focus groups with members, senior officers, individual elected officials. So ahead of the visit, the report does 3 things, all acknowledging the impact of LGR. So it acts as a position statement as to the progress we've made since the original visit and some of the key achievements. So they're set out in Appendix 1 and within the report itself. It provides a detailed update against the original action plan to address each of the recommendations and the observations for improvement, and that's set out in Appendix 2. And it also provides an opportunity to update members on the strategic delivery plan, which monitors our key activities against our corporate plan commitments, and that's set out in Appendix 3. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Becky. I mean, we requested this peer challenge as a council to show how we are doing and actually we came out very well out of it, I think. I think if we had the choice, we would have probably picked either a couple of months before or a couple of months after LGR came along. Is there any questions on that? Councillor Alvey.
Thank you. Yeah, I just have a couple of points I would like to make because it bothers me a bit. One is the Hardley Depot opening. I think where we say this milestone project, this is on page 4, this milestone project delivered after a decade of planning and development, I think that, to me, sums up some of the problems with local government. If it took us a decade to plan and develop that scheme. And the second one is in the key deliverables review. Business as usual, I see we've got the A326 upgrade down as business as usual. For the residents and the water side, this is one of their major concerns, is the A326. And I would not like to see the business as usual, where it says it's going to be removed from the list of key deliverables. I would not like to see that one removed from the list. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. I'm just going to specifically answer on our consideration of that one, the A326. It wasn't to downgrade it as something we would support and work on as a district council. I think it was to reflect that when we are really honing down on our priorities, it was recognising that we're not the lead council taking that scheme forward. So we do have a role, but we, in deliberations, thought our role and response to that could be categorised as business as usual because it would be within the resources that we have, as opposed to something that we are bringing forward proposals to put more project-focused resource into.
Thank you. Do you like to switch your mic off?
Sorry.
Councillor Wade.
Thank you. On scrutiny, which came up in the report, I don't think the actions are enough, really. It mentions agenda planning and topic prioritisations. To be fair, that should be standard, and that's still with the chair and the vice chair from the ruling group. So, rightly or wrongly, there might not be options for what other members like to see within the group and held accountable. Obviously, it was voted and debated on at the time, but no opposition members chairing or vice chairing any scrutiny panels, to me, is a lack of scrutiny. I do think public participation in full council could have been is something to consider. It's the one meeting where all 48 of us come together, and it's the one that's the most engaged. And Council of London might not agree, but I thought it was quite good having the residents from Brockenhurst at the recent public meeting, and I think it's the one meeting that it should be the headline meeting for this council. And also external groups, steering groups, outside bodies, part of the National Park, of course, which I believe does this, more opportunities for a mixture of representation across the councils. I do think last Monday, and I think the chair did a very good job getting up to 12, John, but I do think questions need to be longer. We haven't got long left of this council, but if 18 questions from 16 councillors, then we need to make that longer for more scrutiny at the headline meeting. I thought the staff walkabouts was very interesting, mentioned in there, and going around the estates, that was very, very important. And I think if local councillors could be engaged in that, and I think that's a really useful project as well. I also enjoyed the New Milton and Calshot estates celebrations as well. Was very interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see where else we do that around the district. I've also noticed in the KPI dashboard, I think it's really important that we continually review this, and I noticed I moaned about something and it's not there anymore. You've taken out the annual review. You know, the questionnaire that we did that we've cancelled, it wasn't in the 48 KPIs. So ensuring KPIs are live and relevant to existing business until the council owes is really important. So when we have waste transformation, just keeping that KPI relevant, and anything that isn't relevant now to how the council's running goes. I think that's really important as well. I also really interested to learn more about the diversity and representation groups for staff. It works very well where I work. There are 4 separate ones for 4 protected characteristics, and I think more of those obviously would be appreciated by our staff, and obviously wider support for our staff considering all the other issues that we've discussed and the anxiety that must be with them at the moment. But yeah, that was just sort of the points I picked up. Thank you.
Just to remind you that at every meeting we have our work programme, and at that point I ask if anybody wants to add anything to that work programme. Councillor Woods, were you asking?
Item 8, the carbon reduction programme, the corporate peer. How are the milestones going to be tracked for this, or are there any milestones for it? This is the corporate peer challenge.
I'm just looking at the document, and it says that the climate member task and finish group will be looking at outcomes including milestones. I know that's underway. I haven't got a very recent update, but that's what I would expect, is looking at that particularly sort of focused action plan next steps.
So does that mean that the milestones are still to be announced, are they?
Well, I think we had a comprehensive action plan reasonably recently. I'm trying to think when it came to the place and sustainability panel, but I do know that they have regular updates, and we can send you the latest action plan, which is very comprehensive. And then I think the idea was that we'd be really getting more focused on, with members then driving through that task and finish group, what they specifically in that wanted to see.
So will I be able to find that on our website?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you.
Councillor England, do you have a question?
No, not this time. You were okay. Thank you very much.
Everybody, thank you very much for that presentation. Thanks, Becky.
Recommendation at page 11.
Oh yes, there's a recommendation on page 11. Which is this one. Yes, that the panel note the progress update against each of the CPC recommendations, consider the action plan progress in Appendix 2 of the report, and note the review of the key deliveries in Appendix 3. Panel okay with that? Agree? Thank you. Now we'll move on to the Financial Strategy Task and Finish Group action update from last year's. Paul, you're doing that?
Thank you, Chair. Members may recall that the Financial Strategy Task and Finish Group presented their findings to panel last November. This was in the lead up to setting the budget for the current year. This report provides an update to members on the portfolio holder actions that resulted from that report. The 12 actions and updates can be found in Appendix 1, and this panel is being asked to note the progress made. A number of the matters more relevant to this panel have already provided comprehensive updates through other committees and boards, and are also included on today's agenda. This includes the transformation programme, budget monitoring, and the Solent Free Port. And finally, as a reminder to members, this year's Task and Finish Group has been established. A number of meetings have already been concluded, and the outcome of that work will be presented to the next panel in November. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Well, I'd just like to congratulate the officers in producing this report following last year's financial strategy work. I think it's a step forward. Thank you.
Councillor Wade.
Yeah, I welcome this update as well. Thank you very much for this report. And it was just to highlight that, that clearly there is a challenge. This isn't a criticism of the work of the portfolio holder. It clearly highlights the emergency accommodation over profile of 177570 is a concern for the council. And I think that's money no councillor would ever turn their nose and would happily spend. And unfortunately, it reflects a wider issue that I'm sure we all have casework on, emergency and temporary accommodation and homelessness for families. And that's something I think that the council should continue to invest and spend more on, and shouldn't feel like that's a cost pressure. And I understand the challenges faced. So, but that is really useful to hear the impact on the housing and homelessness team. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, very much. We'll move on to item 8, which is corporate plan key performance data for quarter 1, 25-26. That's over to you, Zach.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Zach Yassin, Performance and Insight Manager. So today I present the KPIs, Key Performance Indicators for quarter 1. This covers a period from April to June 2025, and measure IDs 35 through to 48 only are for consideration this morning for resources and transformation. Data is presented for 23 KPIs in total. 9 of the KPIs are marked for consideration today. I'll just note that the sickness, although it remains a challenge, it is green rated this quarter for the first time over the last 4 quarters. We've seen a steady decline in the number of instances of sickness, and performance is green across all 4 of our ICT measures. The quarter 1 dashboard is presented to all of our panels, and comments will be collated and summarised for Cabinet. Happy to take any questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you obviously just refer to items 35 to 48, please? Has anybody any questions, Councillor Alvey?
Thank you. Yeah, just on the New Forest tax site updates, please. Fawley Waterside, where we say currently devising new master plan with regular engagement taking place. There's a couple of points I would like to make there. Is that the site owner has not carried out any community engagement or consultations as to their future plans with the local residents or parish council, which I find disappointing. And I think I should make it clear.
Excuse me, Councillor Alvey. Councillor Alvey, you're not referring to anything on 35 to 48.
I'm sorry?
Let me skip forward.
You're strictly restricted to 35 to 48 KPIs. You're not doing the KPIs for the whole range. Save that for another committee. Councillor.
Thank you. Firstly, thank you. You've removed the questionnaires, as I mentioned earlier. It was, and I appreciate that, the KPI has been updated, so thank you, Sakib. It was, I think I moaned about it more than once, and I do think this is more relevant to ongoing projects, but it is something that we've, and I'd like to see transformation and waste heavily focused on future others. Sorry, why are ICT targets are always going to be achieved when the target's 70%? The ICT team are excellent, they're very efficient, they need a higher target, otherwise it doesn't become, that's overtly achievable. Everything's in the 90s. I do wonder why 70%, it seems quite arbitrary because of the effectiveness of that team. And I suppose my next question is probably more to Jeremy. Number 41, percentage variance to council budget, minus 10%. Am I right in thinking that's a 10% underspend, or is that a 10% overspend? And why is it so dramatic compared to the upper and lower range targets of 3%? And are there any reasons behind this? And if it is an underspend, why are we not utilising this on services needed?
Underspends were on the end of the financial year, predominantly on the rollover on capital projects. Most of them have just gone on into the new year. So that money is still earmarked and still will go into spend. So it will eventually go through the system. It isn't that we have reserves that are not being utilised, as it were. And indeed, I suspect that it will go the other way as we work through the waste programme and look to deliver that and some of the rising costs within it.
Councillor Woods.
Phil Woods, Fordham Bridge. On number 45, the benefit realisation from ICT investment, what measurable returns have been delivered so far?
Thank you for that question. I would have liked a little bit more warning on that one. I cannot deliver that other than the fact that we continue with the delivery of the service, and obviously that impacts on across the whole of the council in how we staff and run things. But on the top of my head, I can't give you a single deliverable.
A single one?
Not off the top of my head, not when you dropped it on me like that. I'm very happy to reply to that one in a written answer.
Okay, thank you.
Becky, you want to come in?
If I can just come in on that one. So this panel does receive an update from ICT in terms of the projects and project delivery. And at the outset of each project, those benefits are identified. So some of them are financial, some of them are service improvement benefits. So the outcome of the project's identified at an early stage, and then we review progress during implementation and post-implementation to make sure those benefits have been delivered. But that is a report that does come back to this panel. Equally, we can provide the panel with additional information if that would be useful.
Thank you. I look forward to your email, Jeremy.
Thank you very much for that, sir. Moving on. Jeremy? Go on then, quick one.
I would quite like more quarterly staff turnover and staff satisfaction. Bear in mind the impacts of LGR and wider issues. I think it wouldn't be a criticism, it would probably be just to have a look at the bigger picture and understand the impact on the council services, because I can see that number, unfortunately, as we get nearer to 2027, becoming more dramatic, and understand the challenges. But I just think a better understanding of yearly doesn't paint the peaks and troughs when people retire, when people look for other roles. So that would just be really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll take that away. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. There's a recommendation on page 59 that the panel consider and review the Q1 25-26 dashboard, and comments will be passed on for onward consideration by Cabinet. Agree with that? Thank you. We now move on to item 9, Solent Freeport Annual Update. I've got a presentation from Tim.
Thank you, Chair. Just making sure the presentation is up on the screens, which it is. Yeah, morning, everyone. I'm Tim Guymer, the Assistant Director for Place, and updating you today on progress on Solent Freeport. Computer letdown, but here we go. So just very quickly on freeports. Freeports are designated areas within the UK where special economic regulations apply. They're designed to attract investment through tax and customs incentives, ultimately creating thousands of high-quality jobs, especially in our disadvantaged communities. The key objectives of freeports are threefold: to act as national hubs for global trade and investment, to become hotbeds of innovation, and to promote regeneration and sustainable economic growth. In terms of the tools that make freeports effective and are particularly distinct, there are four elements to that. One is that they are tax sites where businesses here benefit from reliefs on business rates, on stamp duty, employer national insurance contributions, and capital allowances. And members will be familiar with the news that benefits have now been extended to 2032 in that regard by the government. In terms of business rates retention, councils retain 100% of the business rates growth for 25 years. That enables reinvestment in infrastructure and regeneration over the course of those years when it's come in and being received. In terms of seed capital, each Freeport has received up to £25 million to address infrastructure gaps. And then fourthly, custom sites. These offer simplified customs arrangements for those businesses operating within them, particularly in regard to import and exports. Moving on, in the Solent area, we have several key tax and customs sites: Solent Gateway and Marchwood Port, the ABP the ABP Strategic Land Reserve, which members will be familiar with, also known now as Solent Gateway 2, the Fawley Complex, Texan Mobile, and Fawley Waterside. Of those 430 hectares of developable land, 330 hectares, or about 70% of it, are within the New Forest. This tax site benefits, again, just a reminder, have been extended to 2032. I'm just going to go through and update you on the key sites now, just starting with Solent Gateway. And members will hopefully have seen progress well underway on Solent Gateway now, with phase 1 and 2 now completed. Phase 3 is due to commence in 2026, and phase 4, which is laying down hard standing, is due to also commence next year, with the intention that that work is completed, as I understand it, by the end of that year. In terms of the ABP Land Reserve, members will hopefully be aware by now that ABP have begun a non-statutory consultation on their proposals. That was launched on Tuesday of this week. The project is expected to be designated as what officers would call a nationally significant infrastructure project. That is a project which is recognised at a national scale to be of importance, and the government will therefore take an active lead in that project in processing it in due course. ABP are undertaking various consultation events over the coming weeks, and those details hopefully have been circulated to yourselves, and we will be making town and parish councils aware of that if they're not already aware. These also include member briefings being set up to enable ABP to present their initial proposals to yourselves, and you will have a chance to meet with them and ask questions as appropriate during that time. As members will also note, the emerging focus on this site is on automotive use. That will help free up space in Southampton for the cruise and container operations, and again, I'm anticipating ABP will be able to explain that in more detail. There is a 30-page consultation document which you again will have hopefully been circulated. I do have a couple of hard copies if that's helpful for you to have to read in hard copy version. Moving on, the Fawley Complex, ExxonMobil, it is seeing major investment through the FAST project, an £800 million expansion aimed at increasing low sulphur diesel production by 40% and reducing UK imports by 25% by the end of this year. The new plant has been commissioned and discussions are well underway about external investment opportunities on the site. Fordy Waterside, we've touched upon that briefly earlier, is currently developing a new master plan which officers at New Forest are in ongoing engagement with to ensure alignment with local priorities. That, again, we can happy to take any questions on that in due course. Seed capital. Each Freeport receives £25 million in capital funding to unlock growth, and that at the moment must be spent by March 2026. That's a government direction at this time. While progress is good, it's unlikely the full amount will be spent by the deadline. The latest call for projects requires capital expenditure that delivers Freeport outputs, such as jobs, skills, innovation, and added GVA. Just a couple more slides. One relating to the use of retained business rates. They are pooled regionally, with investment decisions made by the Solent Freeport Retained Rates Investment Committee. The revenue is already starting to accrue from Dunsbury Park in Havant Borough, with Solent Gateway and ExxonMobil expected to follow. The forecasts show that over £1 million annually will be secured by the end of 25-26, and that will rise to over £4 million annually by 28-29. The funding will be allocated as follows: 15% to skills, 7.5% to net zero, 7.5% to innovation, 60% to regeneration and enabling activity, and 10% to local investment priorities. In terms of our own priorities, the Council in April 2024 agreed to develop a New Forest Freeport delivery plan, and those priorities which are set out in that report include transport and infrastructure, where a planning application, I'm pleased to report, is expected by the end of this year. That application will be made, as I understand it, by Hampshire County Council, with the County Council and the National Park being the determining local planning authorities for that. Employment and skills. There was a skills action plan which was approved again by this council in July 2025, and a working group is now set up to work with key stakeholders in looking at how we can improve our skills delivery in the forest. Prosperous communities, Totten regeneration and the master planning is progressing well. There's a team working proactively with local communities and with the Totten Partnership in bringing forward a master plan for that site, or for that area, should I say. And then finally, the environmental sustainability arm, where various work streams are underway, both in looking at decarbonisation, but also in ecological connectivity, one of those being the connecting of Southampton Water to the National Park, and looking at how we can perhaps reinforce that environmental connectivity. The final slide, members, and just touching upon governance, where the governance for the Freeport includes both the Freeport Board, the Finance, Resources and Audit Committee, and the Retained Rates Investment Committee. They all have New Forest District Council representation on them. Portsmouth City Council continues to act as the accountable body, and importantly, in terms of the devolution kind of lens which we're looking through things now, governance for the Freeport will transition into the mayoral combined authority as part of that, those powers being transferred in due course. That's the end of my presentation, members, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jim. Did I get it right that they want to put cruise terminals on this side of the river? No. Or not? Or was that just expand on the other side?
Yes, Chair. The further details will be, I think, available in due course, but my understanding is that ABP are looking at retaining the cruise activity within the Southampton city side of their port.
Good, because I thought it would be a real problem the other way. Any questions on Councillor Wade?
Yeah, just a couple of questions, really. Firstly, what is the current jobs projection? So I believe we've normally had on previous reports with the jobs that will come from Solent Freeport, which was one of the key selling points, was that it would bring in jobs into the area. Obviously, I appreciate some members have scepticism on that. Also, when will there be an opportunity for local authorities like yourselves to make project bids from the Retained Rates Committee, and will LGR have an impact on how we ensure that it's fairly shared within Fawley, Waterside and the surrounding area? And lastly, what happens to unspent seed capital if it's not spent by March 2026? Do we still get to use it? And my final question is actually I'll leave it for the lead as well.
Chair, if it's okay, I'll answer the first question of there and then maybe pass over to Alan for the latter ones. In terms of jobs creation, we'll be, as officers, looking at any emerging proposals in the light of the previously expressed job numbers. We are mindful, for example, in looking through the ABP consultation material, that they are talking about hundreds of jobs being created on their proposals directly. And again, we will scrutinise those details as and when they become available. At this stage, we don't have any details about job creation on these emerging proposals, which we can analyse and scrutinise for you.
Yeah, just in terms of the second point, Councillor Wade, so obviously as part of the indicative funding share, as part of the business case, there was that 10% local investment priorities allocation that we as the District Council sort of fought for in terms of getting that in there. All I'd say at this stage, I think there's a marked shift now between the focus of the Retained Rates Investment Committee to start thinking a little bit more future-based now, because most of the involvement engagement so far has been on the spending and delivery of seed capital. We are starting to kind of get over that curve. I'd still say at this stage, there's still very much the intent to try to utilise retained rates to bring forward the future delivery of other retained rates. So still more to invest in the delivery of the tax sites. So we're not quite entering that conversation yet in terms of how that local investment priorities allocation might come forward. But obviously, as soon as we get anywhere near it, the intention through our own planning is that we have some oven-ready schemes good to go. So the Tottenham Master Planning work is a really good example of something that we would look to throw in that mix. So we're not quite there yet, but I don't feel like we're too far away.
One question I've got is New Milton and Lymington, where sort of way away from where the Solent bit is, and we wonder what the benefits from this spread out to us.
Again, do you want me to just, because I'd say we covered, I think, a fair bit of this in terms of the original inception of the business case, in that, you know, there are going to be lots of opportunities for roles within the Freeport. So yes, New Milton and Lymington, a little bit far away from the waterside, but actually as a commuter journey goes, it's not ridiculous to think that somebody living in that area may potentially still find employment on one of those tax sites. And I think ultimately, again, it's back to that local investment priorities point, in that the intention was always that we were to see schemes developed and sort of built out, if you like, in the whole of the administrative area of the New Forest. So to share the benefits that are realised from the tax sites across the whole of the New Forest area. As I say, we're not quite there yet in terms of that side of things, but you know, it's coming. We fought hard to get that in there.
Councillor Davies.
Just to say, I do have to give my apologies in a second as I've got a taxi outside. But I will just say that I agree with you on the proposals. I actually would say that it's completely fair that the area that has the most impact from the Freeport gets the lion's share of any sort of funding. As much as I'd like to tout Lymington and Paignton, New Milton and other areas, I think if you're going to have that impact on you, you should have the lion's share. But I would, and it's why I was always very sceptical of the Freeport being kind of such a big economic bit for the council, because actually it will have the biggest impact on the waterside, albeit I don't think it's had anywhere near the impact that it was. I mean, it was never going to have anywhere near the impact it was always going to be touted to have. But obviously, just in terms of jobs, I think it was originally touted at 21,700 direct jobs on the waterside. Do we have existing jobs numbers? Because I know you're talking about the ABP stuff. Do we have existing job numbers at the moment of how many has been delivered?
Chair, I don't have the existing job numbers which have been delivered yet. It's not available. If I may just come back on the wider point about the wider benefits and just seeing some of those tangible opportunities arising, the Skills Action Plan being one at the moment, where there is work across the forest as a whole, where Brockenhurst College, Totton College other skills providers are working for the benefit of our communities, for those people who are struggling to access the workplace, for those which need to have their skills improved. We're already beginning to see some really good cross-boundary working, I say cross-boundary, cross-sector working there, working with businesses. So as we keep reporting back to you in due course and updates, I'm sure we'll be able to give you more definitive outcomes. At this early stage, we don't have that data to give you at this moment in time. Thank you.
Councillor Alvey.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry about earlier. I obviously wishful thinking that we'd moved forward on the agenda, but picking up now on the Fawley Waterside point, I tried to say that I was disappointed that the site owner has not carried out any community engagement or consultations as to their future plans for this site. I'd be grateful if this message could be passed on to the site owner. And I think I should add that as far as we're concerned down in Fawley, we would be very unhappy at any change in the current designation of this site as a strategic site for housing. And if there is such a proposal, we will be looking to see evidence, that it would be evidence-based, not just, oh, it's too difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. If I can respond, it's James Carpenter, Strategic Director of Place Operations and Sustainability. Confirm we are in regular contact with the developers and around Fawley Waterside, and those conversations continue. We're very clear in our understanding that the position of the landowners was that the original proposition was not deliverable or viable. We absolutely recognise that that needs to be clearly conveyed and clearly expressed to this council and to the local community. And part of the work that the Fawley Waterside team have been doing is really building that justification case that we can then bring back to the council and to the various interested parties to really make the case for what a deliverable and viable future for that site is. As I say, we meet with that team regularly. I know they are getting very close to being in a position to come and speak to council colleagues, and clearly we'll also want them to be engaging with the local town councils and parish councils, and I understand there has been some contact, and we've been really advocating for that, and to really ensure that at a really local level there's understanding as to why plans are changing for this site, recognising that for a very long time there was a view expressed about a future for that site that I think has become abundantly clear does not stack up viability-wise. But they need to confirm that, make that case, and then recognise that that needs to go through various planning processes if there is a change to that site, and also accepting that requires a whole piece around engagement and communication as well.
Thank you, Tim and James. Thank you for that presentation. Moving on to future meeting dates. Just note those.
I need to agree those, Chairman.
And agree them?
Yeah.
Yes? I presume you've all looked them up. Item 11, portfolio updates. Leader.
Thank you. I'm going to cover kind of three groups if I can. Staffing, obviously a really hot topic for us at the moment. And you will have, from today's meeting, gained a sense of the breadth of activity that we have on at the moment as a council. As much as this is a challenge for us, for members, it's also something I've been discussing with the Chief Exec as we remain committed to delivering our people strategy and supporting our staff now and in the future, of which really does seem uncertain. We are in the lap of the gods. I don't like that. I like to know where I'm going with a very definite path. But whatever we do, we will be doing pulse surveys with all our employees. We will have their best interests at heart We will be doing training, extensive training, so if they want to train up for new skills, etc., we will do the very, very best that we can for our staff. I want everybody to be really reassured on that. That is literally tattooed on my heart. I and group leaders have talked through the new employee engagement plan, building on what already works, such as the staff briefings by the Chief Exec. I think if you've ever seen any of those or been to any of those, they are fabulous. It's a real buzz, which is pleasing to see. Engagement through groups such as the Employee Forum, which I go to. Diversity and inclusion groups. I have yet, because of meeting clashes, to get to the LGBTQ.
They have so many letters,
Something.
don't they?
Sorry.
Don't they have so many letters?
I have promised to take cake and stay with them, but every time they have a meeting, it's clashed with LGR or wherever I am, Winchester. As I've just said, the pulse surveys. We also heard at the HR committee that we're developing a new approach to performance development, moving away from an annual online process. We're going to go through more regular forward-facing growth and goals. Any of you that have seen the video from HR committee, again, that is a great way forward, and staff are very happy with that. We know we've got to be more agile. We've got to use a range of techniques to retain our valuable staff. I wouldn't like to see a mass exodus on any scale or form. We are updating our market forces policy to enable this work for us in a new context. Under resources, I can outline, as I did at Council, that we are keeping resources and priorities under review. We know that we will need to increase our budget and our capacity to deliver LGR. I mean, you've seen that today, and you haven't actually seen all of the work that is going on. That's a small section. And I think when our Chief Exec does our member update, you will further see just how much work we will have to cover, and the details of that work, quite honestly, are staggering. They really are staggering and give me nightmares. You will see that we've got some key corporate plan priorities that we want to make sure happen. That was the point of making the corporate plan, as well as maintaining our good services every day to our residents. EMT are bringing all of our projects and priorities together in a single plan, and this will then support the budget setting process and drive delivery from now through to 2028. So it's kind of a round robin of what we are doing, so that you get an idea. We are still continuing business as usual. Staff are at our heart. We are learning new techniques to help engage with them and give them, as I said, the very best opportunity that we can. I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Wade.
There's two. Firstly, obviously with the presentation with Solent Freeport and Dibden Bay's consultation, obviously we're not a decision maker, but we are a consultee, and obviously we will have a corporate view, although individual councils may have their views and town and parish council views. Is it therefore guaranteed with our work on Solent Freeport that NFDC are in favour of Dibden Bay's, ABP's proposals for Dibden Bay, or is it something they're looking at? And what guarantees that local members have and local residents who might have not made their mind up yet, that NFDC will consider it in the whole and not necessarily linked to the Freeport? I have a second completely unrelated question.
Wow. Seeing as it only came in 2 days ago, I have seen the title. I haven't had a chance to look at the report. I know our officers have kindly sent out a couple of emails. We will look at it. We will come back to you with the merits. We will have a member briefing. I know Alistair Welsh is going to come here and give us a member briefing. I think it's the 10th of October. Oh, 2nd of October, sorry, it changed. So you'll be able to really ask the horse's mouth the questions then. But we will consider all members, we will consider town and parish councils, I can assure you of that. It is a huge scheme, so we can't just say, yes, go ahead.
My second question is regard to the peer review and something that you mentioned in there, and in fact, obviously, it's linked to LGR, is the encouraging all political groups to have better representation on this council, which, as you know, is you are a bit of a minority, 8 of 48, which is awful. But with LGR making it, less councillors, less representation, what work can we do, all members, then to work on this so hopefully there is a bit more diversity coming forward and that there are opportunities for younger, working, more people with families, and there's better reputation on the council? Because I do appreciate that you share my concern on this, is that we aren't the most representative council for the people that we represent.
I know we aren't the best representative council for the people we represent. I know that as a Conservative Party, we are continually asking the younger mums, the younger dads to get involved in politics. But I think life has significantly changed for everybody since COVID. And I think it's brought a realisation to families. They want to do more family things together, because it's not just politics that people don't really want to come into. It's staffing charity shops. It's becoming a PTA member. It's anything that takes people away from their home. And I think they want to focus on family values, and I think that's wonderful. But unfortunately, we are losing a lot of what I call volunteers to go into other stuff. And the very short answer, Alex, is I don't know how to tempt them in. I don't know what will tempt them in. And with LGR coming and councillors being expected to do way more work and undertake vast areas, are they going to want to do that? Are we, as councillors who are already, doing lots of work, are we going to look and go, my God, I'm covering, 3 times the area. How the hell am I going to get round it? How am I actually going to have hands-on to my communities, which to me is very important? I don't know. I can't give you an answer, I'm afraid.
I do think there's work we could all do, led by yourself, engaging with schools and colleges and youth groups as a starter for 10, because there will be someone out there we can find for the future. I do echo your points on local organisations. It's football clubs, charity shops, youth groups. It is continually a challenge, and all those organisations like Age Concern, when people retire, we're all aware of them. We all have connections as town and parish councils. But I do think it's something the council should look at.
But I will say our elections team go out to schools, they give them the equipment, they hold voting days, and they are doing a wow job with the youth in schools, etc. Now, when the youth grow up, do they want to then get involved in that? I don't know. That's going to be to the politics of the time. But a really good shout out to Debbie Everett, who has done. Have a talk with her. Send her an email and just ask her what she's doing. Be prepared to sit for an hour, because she'll tell you. And it's fantastic. The work that she's covered, brilliant.
Thank you, Councillor Cleary. Councillor Harrow?
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'll start off, Councillor, with congratulations on catching me out on the ICT. It wasn't where I was expecting a question to come from, and you got me. What I will say is that our ICT projects are particularly unusual in the fact that when we set them out, we do indeed list what we propose to achieve with those, and at the end of the project, we detail what we have achieved. So be prepared for a list back, because it is, we are a bit like the billiards of committees on that one. We tell people what we're going to achieve before we take the shot. So you can get that. I would also like to point out that I always think that the trick of ICT is not to be seen. The trick is that everybody uses it, all of you, all around this room, all the time, and the trick is for it not really to be noticed. And to point that out, I would just like to draw your attention to JLR cyber attack that everyone is in the news at the moment, the millions that is costing. Do not think that New Forest District Council is exempt from those challenges. We fend them off literally on a daily basis. So the fact that you're all sat here on your computer not particularly concerned about it right at this moment, I think is a huge benefit of the system that we now have. And you are, in some of our terms, relatively new to this council, but had you seen our ICT 7 years probably back now, you would be truly amazed at how we have come forward and what our team has done. And I have no praise high enough for them in what they're delivering, but you will indeed get a list of the projects, the delivery on them, and the benefits. And as I say, ICT are brave enough to list that up front on day one of their projects. A couple of other things. Solent Freeport. I have to say that I am very pleased with how that is now progressing. I like a lot of members around this room, you know, it was delivered with a fanfare. It was going to fix all ills, all things. It was going to deliver huge benefits to the waterside and all down that edge of the forest. And then it kind of, I don't know if everyone else felt it, it sort of went into a damp squib mode. There were several others, like the Liverpool Docks one, were forging ahead, and ours it just didn't seem to kick in. I am pleased to say that I think that in the last few months that has significantly changed in how it's going forward. With regard to the seed capital, yes, it is at risk. If we don't spend it, we lose it. Already, there are some alternative projects being looked at in case we have to switch where those resources go to ensure that that money is maintained within the area and does deliver for the community. So be assured, we will deal with that. We have no desire, none whatsoever, to give that back to government. So we are indeed moving forward with that one. And again, on the benefits, we very sensibly, I think, included the whole forest, because that meant that those benefits could go wider. Particularly at the time, I was thinking of the education and being able to support that through other areas like Brockenhurst, rather than just simply on the waterside through Applemore and such. So it is, but we do understand, if that area of the forest is going to deliver for the forest in economic growth, then it indeed is the area where that infrastructure needs to be spent primarily, and it needs to deliver for those people who are probably going to have to pick up more inconvenience than the rest of the forest. So be assured, I am well aware of that. What else are we doing? We're ending the second quarter of our financial year. Very interested to monitor our budget and look at how that is progressing, and make sure that where changes and adaptation has to come through, we will do it, and that will obviously be delivered through a cabinet paper on the medium-term financial plan. Local government reorganisation, it gets everywhere, doesn't it? I've attended so many meetings, not necessarily ones I have to, but also ones that are of interest to me, going over to Brockenhurst and watching Hampshire speak on that and things like that. No one can get past the rollout of the waste strategy. We're all in that one. I hope we're all in it together. I hope we're all in it to deliver a brilliant service for our community. It is not an easy thing. Peer review. I had to come back to this one. Interestingly, we are going to see a member of the opposition chairing one of our financial strategy task and finish groups. You might know the guy. it will be, I think he is now in the spotlight to show how well that is going to work. And I think it is up to him to demonstrate, I mean, you may say it was not expected, but it's beholden to him to demonstrate how that really would be a good idea going forward. And I think we will have to listen to, well, we're going to see it happen, and we are going to have to listen to it and see what it delivers for us, aren't we? So it will be a very interesting time. I'm sure he'll be really nice to me and kind. But yeah, so I think that's about all I've got on my list at this moment, so happy to take any questions.
Councillor Wade.
I was aware that is a task and finish group and not public facing, and obviously has to go to a scrutiny panel and be signed off. And I do hope that you sound very effusive about it, Jeremy. I look forward to you supporting some opposition members chairing or vice chairing scrutinies should we bring it forward before the end of the council. I think you're responsible for this team, so I do want to call out a member of the team. With the waste strategy, there's a huge Facebook conversations and discussions and frustrations, and whoever the social media officer responsible for dealing with them deserves absolute credit. High-level officers or portfolio holders should have to deal with those challenges and questions and often frustrations from understandable residents, but that individual deserves credit because they have been responding and dealing with lots of issues, and it's whoever that individual in the social media team have been doing a lot of hard work and carrying where maybe the answer to scrutiny should be elsewhere, so that person deserves praise. And in the other panels, it was asked how much SIL funding we have currently stored up and saved, and it was answered by, I believe, by an officer of £9 million. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Considering the timescale that we have with LGR and when we no longer have full control of our finances from the New Forest, how much of that can we guarantee will be utilised for New Forest projects, organisations and clubs, and will we get the opportunity to have those decisions in place before LGR and we lose full control?
What a collection of... Right, I want to first of all deliver with the social media, and I agree with you entirely. We're doing brilliantly on that, and all credit to those in the team that are delivering on that, because I think half the problem is always getting the message out and communicating with people. People are much better if you communicate. So I agree with you entirely. Isn't it a role? We visit 10.3 million houses every year on our waste. So every time we go round, count them again. I mean, they're not they're repeat visits, but 10 million. That is rising because we're now doing food waste, which will rise to between sort of 13 to 15 million household visits. Yeah. It only needs 1% to go wrong for, like you say, to be a deluge of communications that need to be, and they do need to be, responded to efficiently and effectively. Perhaps something that I certainly didn't appreciate, those numbers going into this waste strategy. I think others might not. So yes, all praise to them for delivering on that, and we are putting resources in there to help them to keep up with that flow of information, because as I say, information is vital when delivering this service, and it perhaps was one of the issues that we fell down on very much in the early days. SIL funding. I don't know the exact figures and I can't confirm them. I was going to look at Tim and see whether he's got any knowledge of them, but we hold SIL funding in two forms. One is the funding that is deliberately attributable to the town and parishes, and obviously that varies if they've managed to get their local plan in and they get a higher rate. And the other is what we hold for the forest as district funding. We are keen, and we are very keen, to get that money on the ground, because it doesn't do any good in a bank account to our residents. What it does, it doesn't make up for the development that they're having put in, much like your discussions about the solar Freeport and the effects it has. It only really works when it's on the ground, when it's actually delivering a project but we have finite resources on that. We are delivering a number of projects currently. We are looking at some future projects. Will we get through it all? I think I'd have to ask officers to give me an answer on that one, because I simply don't know. The other thing is, of course, that it's a changing feast with more and more coming in. At the moment, we seem to have slowed down a bit on those developers bringing forward. I mean, they're putting in the planning applications, but they're not actually bringing forward those major projects that we've seen. And if we have a flurry of that again, then the money becomes payable, and then we will have even more to deliver on. But perhaps an officer could help me on what projects are delivering and what sort of money we're looking to put out into the community.
Thank you.
Tim, did I just stitch you up then?
I'm not going to talk about numbers in particular now because I don't have them immediately to hand. Every year the Council publishes what's called an infrastructure funding statement. They're online and you can look at the previous years to see where the Council has spent money and where they plan to spend money over the coming year. The matter of the unspent community infrastructure levy, which is not committed, we are mindful of that as officers and will be bringing reports back to Council in due course about recommendations as to future spend. Members will be aware of the various different strands which we've been spending money on, including the what's called Greenway project, the mitigation work which we do to enable new development to take place in the forest. We also have been releasing £1 million a year on approximately for local infrastructure projects from the Council's money. Councillor Heron's already talked about the money which is automatically allocated to town and parishes which have a made neighbourhood plan. And we are currently on expressions of interest to strategic infrastructure providers to ask them what their ideas are about what they could deliver in the New Forest. That closes at the end of this month, and as I say, we'll keep members updated on that work. But we are mindful that we do have a responsibility to manage that money carefully and wisely.
Thank you, Councillor Harrow. Moving on, work programme. Everybody happy with that as it is at the moment? Thank you. Item 13, I don't have any items urgent. Thank you for your attendance to this very long meeting. We just about survived with members, I think.
Just declare the meeting closed, Chairman.
Oh, yes, meeting is now closed. Thank you.